Here now to discuss the presidential race, the political calculations involved given the Supreme Court vacancy, and the Catholic vote is senior advisor to the Trump-Pence campaign, Mercedes Schlapp. Mercedes, welcome back to the show. President Trump has said he will announce a pick for the Supreme Court on Saturday. Is this SCOTUS battle a defining moment for this election?
You know, I think it is. I really do think that this moment is critical. As we know, the president has been an individual who understands the importance of appointing strict constitutionalists to the not only to the Supreme Court, but also to many of these federal courts, which has been a priority for him. And I think it is his legacy. It is part of the fact that he has been able to find over close to 200 talented, strict constitutionalists to put into these different courts, but also, obviously, as we know, the Supreme Court pick being of utmost importance, and obviously in help of galvanizing so many Republicans out there to go and support the president.
Mitch McConnell has said he will get a vote to the floor by the end of the year. Now, the Senate split is 52-47. With the Collins defection, does he have the votes to get this done before the election? And is that what the president wants? Is that wise?
Well, I think for the president, you know, it's the goal of the president and the majority leader to get through this process. Obviously, you know, we've seen in the past that there's been justices who have been confirmed in the 30-something, 40-something day window. So it is absolutely possible to get this done. And so I think that based on what we heard this week, there's a good number of these Republicans that are supporting the president and moving forward with a vote prior to the election. And what I find interesting, though, Raymond, is the fact that the Democrats are the ones that are in a really difficult position, because now they're talking about, well, if they go forward with this vote, we're going to change everything, according to Senator Schumer. They're willing to move forward with hacking the court. Just think about that. Fundamentally changing the institution of the Supreme Court from going from 9 justices to 11 or 12 justices.
Right.
So they can push their radical leftist agenda. This is what they do in countries like Venezuela. This is what they do in communist countries, is when you have this other party coming in saying that they want to change the institution of the Supreme Court.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even Ruth Bader Ginsburg said this is a bad idea to pack the court.
Exactly.
Leave it at 9. That's
Keep it
enough.
at 9.
I mean, she's on record saying that. How does an Amy Coney Barrett nomination, for instance, change this presidential race? I've said, in fact, the night Ruth Bader Ginsburg passed away, I said that this galvanizes Catholics and evangelicals, and it really blows away these bromideal restore decency, bring back dignity to the White House arguments. What is your take? What issues does this bring into crisp focus, particularly for Catholic voters?
Well, first of all, I'm not going to get ahead of the president in terms of who he names as his nominee for the Supreme Court. We know that the president has had a very strong record in what he picked Brett Kavanaugh and Neil Gorsuch. But I will say one thing. We know the president's going to pick a qualified woman, someone who is going to interpret the law, not make the law. Our biggest concern, as you know, being a woman, and I'm a Catholic woman, and we're not, you know, we know at least the president's going to pick a woman, is that any woman that the president picks, the Democrats will try to demonize. They're going to try to push this woman to make that woman into someone that's just out of touch with the rest of the, you know, female population. And this is a problem I think that conservative women have had for a long time. See, the Democrats have always said, well, we are, you know, the party of women, and it's all about women's rights and abortion rights and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, you know, their policies really have been harmful to women. And so there are what I would call, you know, that silent majority of conservative women who feel very strongly that the Democrat Party has never represented what our views are as pro-lifers, as individuals who really believe that we don't need a government handout, that we don't need government control in our lives, that we want school choice for our children, and we want to be able to obviously protect our religious liberty, something that's a very important to conservative women. So that's what I'm concerned about, is that by picking this woman, it becomes something that someone that the Democrats can try very much to demonize in this process and really try to destroy. And we saw that character assassination with Brett Kavanaugh, a very qualified jurist, someone who they went back to his high school years to try to destroy this wonderful man, someone who I worked with at the White House during the Bush years.
Yeah, I do think it's going to be different and more difficult to do that to Kavanaugh, a woman. I mean, particularly if it's an Amy Coney Barrett type. I mean, you know, she is a very close-knit family. In fact, I just spoke to some of her friends here in New Orleans. That's going to be it's going to be much more difficult to demonize someone like her in the way that they went after Kavanaugh. And also, none of her friends kept a calendar, so that's a good thing.
But I will tell you, though, we've seen Kamala Harris, for example, going after the Knights of Columbus, a charitable organization for Catholics. And the fact is that she literally used that as a litmus test to determine if someone would be qualified to be a judge or not a judge, almost associating the Knights of Columbus with the hate group. This is how far the Democrats are willing to go. So, Raymond, I would have to argue with you a bit. I think that they will try to destroy. Oh, yeah, they will try to destroy this woman because of the fact that it is taking the seat of Ruth Bader Ginsburg that they feel that the Democrats should own. And the fact is that if it's a woman of faith, that in and of itself, I think, will be a reason for them to go on the attack to destroy this person. I really do believe that. And I think I've seen stories just on the nominees, potential nominee pick, and it's very disturbing the path that these Democrats will take.
Yeah, well, I think it's going to backfire, particularly if they use religion, if they try to morph religion into a negative. That's the American people aren't going to stand for that, and certainly Catholics won't. There have been people who predict that we'll see an uprising in the streets if this appointment gets pushed too fast. Shortly after Ruth Bader Ginsburg passed away, people on social media, one tweet from Reza Aslan read the following: if they even try to replace RBG, we'll burn the entire blanking thing down. We've already seen renewed protests over the Breonna Taylor prosecution, or non-prosecution in some cases. If people do protest, what effect do you believe that has on the president's reelection? Does that make people take his law and order message in a different way or receive it in a different way?
Yeah, well, I mean, I've been traveling across the country and meeting with women, meeting with Latinos, meeting with Blacks, and there is a common thread there. And they want law and order. They want safe communities. They don't like this chaos that we're seeing on the streets, the constant organized riots, the looting that's happening in the streets, the fact that they're demonizing our police, which of course has led to increased crimes in cities like New York City and Chicago. And so I think that if this is I feel that the Democrats have just decided that they've adopted this new tactics of riots as being their way of expressing themselves in their political strategy. And I think it will backfire on the Democrats. I mean, they don't have a ground game, but let me tell you, they know how to put together a riot in a short period of time run by Antifa. And so I think that, look, we saw some of this play out in Brett Kavanaugh's hearings, where you saw, people going to the streets, going to the Supreme Court. I remember one woman standing right in front of the door of the Supreme Court, banging on the door. And it's like, look, they got to get a grip. I mean, this is a moment in time that we know that the Senate is in the hands of Republicans. The president is in charge. The president has a constitutional right to do this. And they can cry as much as they want. They can throw a tantrum as much as they want. But at the end of the day, the president has a constitutional right to make this decision.
I want to move on to focus a bit on how the left are targeting the Catholic vote. On Wednesday, Speaker Nancy Pelosi joined a Facebook Live event with Nuns on the Bus, led by Sister Simone Campbell, who is a Democratic surrogate in many ways. This was her opening statement. Listen.
I want to thank Sister Simone for her leadership and all the nuns. I've always said, thank God for the nuns. Without the nuns, we would never have passed the Affordable Care Act. Without the nuns, we would never have saved the Affordable Care Act. in our own Catholic faith, where we are taught the Gospel of Matthew, when I was hungry, when I was naked, when I was homeless, when I was sick, when I needed comfort, when I was in prison, sometimes that is forgotten by some in our faith.
Mercedes, is that effective, especially coming from a person who wrote the law that compelled the Little Sisters of the Poor, those nuns, to pay for contraceptives and abortifacients under the Affordable Care Act?
You were thinking exactly what I was going to say, which is that, I think she forgot to recognize the Little Sisters of the Poor, which, of course, as we know, have been in that lawsuit in terms of forcing them to buy contraception. And I think it just shows that, these Democrats cherry pick. They cherry pick when it comes to Catholics. I think I kind of found it interesting when the Catholics for Biden spokesperson came out, and it was actually on EWTN talking about the Catholics being multi-issue voters, but then wouldn't even get near the issue of abortion. And the reality is that party has become so extreme on abortion, on allowing for late-term abortions, on providing taxpayer funds for abortions, on supporting the abortion industry. And I find, that is just so anti-Catholic in and of itself. And the fact is that when you look at, I just want to, she talked about feeding the hungry, and clothing the naked. I mean, let's be real. It's been under President Trump economic policies that we have seen poverty rates at a record low, especially for Latinos and Blacks. Just think about that. And so we have made tremendous strides on the economic standpoint, making sure that there's opportunities for Americans to get back on their feet. While the Democrats, it's all about, keeping them stuck, keeping people stuck in a cycle of poverty. And that is not what we need. And quite frankly, they are the ones that have been aggressive against our churches. The Democrats have been. I mean, we're the ones that ensure that the faith-based organizations can do their job and provide for the poor. And so I think that that's really, I find it interesting that it would be Nancy Pelosi the one to try to, get the Catholic vote, while at the end of the day, when you look at their policies, it very much is, I think, so extreme. I mean, the mere fact that they've taken out you've seen their party take out the word "under God" from the Pledge of Allegiance, I think is very telling.
Well, Mercedes, I've said for years, and I begged my Democratic friends, why not make a play for the pro-life vote? Why not make a play for those Catholics who might agree with you in so many ways, but because of the militant stance on abortion and religious liberties, it alienates them. But I want to play this. This is Sister Simone Campbell. She's talking about the Catholic voter. Listen.
We need everyone in this election cycle. So I'm speaking out as a Catholic, as a multi-issue voter, knowing that Pope Francis has made it abundantly clear it is important to care for the unborn. The unborn is who we have a duty to care for, but it's access to health care, it's care for the mother, it's making sure that a pregnant woman has the capacity to keep a roof over her head and to care for children. That's how we care for the unborn.
Mercedes, your take on that. She says Catholics are multi-issue voters. But my question is, if the unborn are not the preeminent concern, does everything else matter? And does that rhetoric resonate with Catholic voters?
I just think that they have moved so far away from, I find it interesting how she's playing around with these words about the unborn. And I think primarily, when you look at it, it's the fact that when you've seen what the Democrats politicians have said, for example, Governor Northam saying the baby will be born, make the baby comfortable, then execute the baby, or a baby's born, the baby survives the abortion, but then you don't give the baby medical care. So tell me how that's taking care of the unborn. And that is where I think that the Democrats have completely lost sight and given in to the abortion industry, to Planned Parenthood, that they want to be so loved and accepted by Planned Parenthood. And I think it just goes against everything that Catholics stand for, which is that we stand for life. We stand for defending the unborn. It is such a priority.
Final question, Mercedes. I only have a minute. President Trump called mail-in voting a scam during a recent press conference. He was attempting to draw a line between people who specifically request absentee ballots and states where mail-in ballots are just being widely issued. So far, Democrats have requested more absentee ballots than Republicans in key states, including more than 65.1 million absentee ballots that have already gone out. They've been requested in 31 states and the District of Columbia. How much of a concern is that to the Trump campaign?
Well, we're obviously tracking the trends. We know historically Republicans generally vote in person, and they usually vote on the day of the election. Democrats historically vote mail in. I mean, the more percentage of Democrats vote mail in. So I think it's through absentee ballots. So I think that's what we are tracking right now, is the fact that obviously what we've seen with the global pandemic, there's been more requests for absentee ballots. We're not surprised that it's coming more from the Democrat side than the Republican side. But I do believe that we're going to make huge inroads in these critical states. We've have an impressive ground game infrastructure. We are knocking on doors. We are making phone calls. We are not doing this virtual campaigning, basement campaigning that Joe Biden and his surrogates are doing. We've got the president traveling throughout these targeted states, First Family. We've got 2 bus tours going on. We are aggressively courting these voters. And so I think that for us, I think that we're going to have the strong numbers come out. And, the key is obviously that it's going to be critical to get those undecided voters to bring over some of these Democrat voters on our side. So we're not concerned about that. What we are concerned about is universal mail-in voting. We are concerned about states like Nevada, where these Democrats fundamentally changed the voting system 90 days before an election, where the mail-in vote can come in. And if it's postmarked, you can count it up to 7 days after. If it's not postmarked, you can count it 3 days after the election. This is going to create chaos because we know that the local election officials do not have the capability to deal with millions of mail-in votes coming in at the same time.
No, it's the election night, and it's all afterflow is going to be a nightmare. Mercedes Schlapp will be in touch with you throughout. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.